Hello students, today we are going to discuss themes of praise of folly. So in themes we find that throughout the work two themes are intertwined, that of salutary folly which is true wisdom and that of deluded wisdom which is pure folly. So as they are both put into the mouth of folly by Erasmus, we should have to invert them both to get truth if folly were not wisdom. Now it is clear that the first is the principal theme throughout the book and Erasmus starts from it and he returns to it only in the middle as we review human accomplishments and dignities in their universal foolishness. The second theme becomes predominant and the book becomes an ordinary satire on human folly, of which there are many, though few are so delicate follies, which is discussed by Erasmus. Occasionally, the satire runs somewhat off the line when Stultitia directly censors what Erasmus wishes to censor. Now, moving on to the themes, the folly of theologians. Folly here explains that no other group of people is so hesitant to acknowledge her services, despite being so thoroughly in her debt. According to her, these men protect themselves with academic definitions, logical argumentation, inferential corollaries, explicit and implicit propositions, but are arrogant, confusing, and misled. They prefer their own discourses according to folly to the scriptures and mold the biblical text to their thesis. They speak in an obnoxious manner intended to awe their listener. They focus on minute and superfluities. Monks believe their adherence to strict rules means they are exemplar of Christian faith. Popes and bishops delight in their lives of luxury. Christ's message of simplicity is lost to these men. So strong are Erasmus's feeling on the theologians that it is through contemplation of them that folly's tone begins to grow harsher and drop the light-heartedness and characterize it in the beginning. Now, next is the necessity of love, folly for love, marriage, and friendship. According to Folly, it is necessary for all relationship on earth, particularly marriage and friendship. There would be so many more divorces if marriages was not eased by flattery, jokes, yielding, disposition, mutual misunderstanding, and dissimulations. Husband and wives, according to Folly, are able to overlook each other's flaws and conceive of their spouses as ideal. Indeed, it would be difficult to have a child without the help of folly. And Folly says that friendship also benefits from her, for friends have to convince themselves that their friends' shortcomings are insignificant and their vices are their virtues. The fact that human can find pleasure in another human's company, despite humans' great flaws and vices, is due to folly. So, by stressing her impact on these elements, Folly argues she is integrated into the most important aspect of human relationship. Moving on to the next point, which is Christianity and folly. Here she says that most might assume Christianity is indebted more to wise men than to fools. But Erasmus writes that the entire Christian religion seems to bear a certain natural affinity to folly and relate far less clearly to wisdom. Throughout the Bible, foolishness is spoken of approvingly, while wisdom is exasperated for being too closely part of the world. Examples can be found in Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes is obviously a Hebrew Kohelet preacher, an Old Testament book of wisdom literature that belongs to the third section of the biblical canon known as the Ketuvim or writings. Here he says that Ecclesiastes, in the words of Paul and Christ in Proverbs in the second Corinthians and more, Christ himself is the biggest fool of all because he took on the sin of all mankind and became sin itself. His words or his word was carried throughout the world by his ignorant, sotis disciples, and his lesson was nothing but folly and avoidance of wisdom. So, according to him, knowledge was proven to be dangerous even as clearly as Genesis, where Adam and Eve were instructed not to eat from the tree of knowledge. He further says happiness in Christ is close to madness, thus revealing the essential thesis of the speech's third section and Christianity welcomes and is for the fools and the ignorant, according to Erasmus, or the Folly. Now, these arguments were very much responsible for what made Erasmus's work so controversial upon its publication. So, it is obvious from this theme of Christianity and folly, which is discussed by Erasmus. Now, moving on to the next theme is self-love and flattery. Both are commonly regarded in a negative light, but folly demonstrates how they are beneficial to society. Here she says that if a man does not love himself, he will not be able to do anything that is agreeable, gracious, and not in bad taste. He has to flatter himself a bit before he can be esteemed by others as esteemed one. And here Philologia helps men appreciate their looks, intelligence, and position in the world. Flattery is self-love when applied to others and is equally necessary according to Folly. Here she says that it lifts dejected spirits, raises people out of the dumps, enlivens the laughing, animates the dull, heartens the sick, placates the angry, brings lovers together and keeps them together. So it is a part of the admired art of eloquence and is the honey and spice of all human intercourse according to Folly. Here Folly understands that pure honesty and truth can be dangerous and that flattery is helpful and even virtuous. Thus, both self-love and flattery helps mankind live their lives, forget about their problems, and achieve great things in their lives. And so by default, folly is responsible for encouraging those great things. Now, next point is delusion and ignorance. So here again, according to Folly, Folly pleads her cases that she makes mankind happier than wisdom can. Her argument is that man is happier when he does not realize the ugly truth of the world, and that a healthy dose of delusion can assist in that purpose. Here she says that the calamities of the world are many and only a helping of folly can mitigate them, and the problems of old age can be ameliorated. Here she says that folly makes the old young again. That means she helps in making the old people young or feel young. She makes marriages and other relationships pleasant, brings amusement to the gatherings, and helps people forget their trials and tribulations, assists men in their creative endeavors, oil the wheels of society through flattery, and expels boredom and despair. She further says that the philosophers who claim to know the miseries of existence are the most dour and discontented men. Wisdom does not bring contentment, whereas the happiest people on earth are the fools and the simpletons who are ignorant of fear, anger, depression, and death. Folly counsels her listeners to embrace ignorance. Now, next is the uselessness of philosophy. Here, philosophy in the praise of folly is revealed to be a useless and self-indulgent endeavor. It involves lofty claims to understanding nature, existence, essence, and God. Here she says that philosophers' ideas are never used to actually rule a commonwealth. The few historical examples proved to be disastrous, and they are example enough to tell the people that the world cannot depend on the philosophy of the philosophers, or cannot be ruled with the philosophy of the philosophers. Now, these men are the most odious in company, as they are unfit to mirth or pleasure. Overall, they are completely useless to other men, their families, and even themselves, because he knows nothing of everyday matters and exists on a completely different plane from that of common opinion and popular custom. They spend their time patting each other on the back or tearing apart each other's conjectures. It is far better to be a fool or a simpleton than a philosopher, according to Folly, because better to live on one's life than it is to contemplate it. Now, moving on, next is the ubiquity of folly. Now, folly ubiquity is being present everywhere. Folly is found everywhere. She lists various academic and social classes of men who rely upon folly for their accomplishment or who indulge in her offerings to gain fame and happiness. This life includes doctors, lawyers, mystics, gamblers, hunters, philosophers, grammar teachers, businessmen, authors, poets, performers, lovers, doctors of theology, priests, monks, princes, courtiers, cardinals, bishops, and popes, according to Folly. She is found in marriages, friendship, and other relationships as well. She says, not only can we find nothing either joyous or pleasant which doesn't owe a debt to folly, but almost no profession or endeavor is without her influence. Perhaps the best manifestation of this argument is that folly ends up including every person or example as her dominion by the end of the speech. That means everything comes under her domain. The fools are the foolish through behavior, while the wise and the philosophical are foolish precisely because they do not embrace her despite their foolishness. Now, coming to the rhetoric style, not only is Erasmus's work structured as speech, but there are many explicit and implicit comments on oratory as well. Now, early on, Folly insists she will not use the common oratorical tricks, and yet ironically proceed to use some of them nevertheless. Now, as we over and over lambast as he over and over lambasts various figures for the way they speak or manipulate language for their own benefits, she is ironically doing what very thing, thereby reinforcing her argument that every aspect of our life is representative of folly. So, this is all for today. Thank you all.